Hey everyone, it's your girl Emma from EA Public Relations. Welcome to another episode of Free Falling in Niagara. This segment I'm going to share an episode of overt racism that happened in a town called Niagara-on-the-Lake. And this happened a little over a week ago. Now, there are 19 Black people that are buried in this cemetery, and it's called the Negro Burial Ground. There are 2 white people that are buried in that same cemetery. What they have done is they have knocked down the plots of the 19 Black people that were buried there and covered them and then replaced them with Canadian flags. Let me just add that these 19 people were freedom seekers that came in through the Underground Railroad, and they contributed to this town. Now, there was a rally that took place, and something happened at that rally. I'm going to play the clip that was covered by the local news.
This burial ground in Niagara-on-the-Lake has a name that seems out of step with the times. The 2 grave markers still standing are of white men who had a church here in the 1800s. Most people who went to the church were Black, but their grave markers are now nowhere to be seen. Paul Dolby remembers them as a schoolboy in the 1960s.
I remember there was maybe at least half a dozen stones visible. Some at the front you could read.
James Russell says the other headstones were knocked down and covered in the 1970s and 80s by the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake.
The people here who were freedom seekers who came up in the 1800s have now been rendered anonymous, and that's a shame.
His campaign now is to have the town restore the headstones, 19 of them, to their graves marked with flags. But while Russell was holding a rally, something unexpected happened away from our camera. At one point, people here were shocked when a woman in an expensive red sports car drove up and stopped at the side of this road and yelled something offensive.
She stopped her car, looked at James standing there, and said, "I think you all need to go back to Africa." And James said, "Have a nice day." I was astounded. I've lived in Canada my whole life, and I maintain that we're not racist, but she proved otherwise.
James Russell says it's unusual to encounter such open racism in Canada. And it happened in a place that was a refuge of freedom in the 1800s for people escaping slavery in the U.S. on the Underground Railroad.
It was liberty. If they could make it across the Niagara River, they were no longer considered enslaved.
Supporter Felix Abbott says the town doesn't care about this aspect of its history.
They're not on board with Black history, and they don't want to understand the struggle. And they want to cover up Black history, which is something that we can't be happening.
Miss Russell, there's no racism in Canada? Ma'am.
Car looked at James standing there and said, "I think you all need to go back to Africa." And James said, "Have a nice day." I was astounded. I've lived in Canada my whole life, and I maintain that we're not racist, but she proved otherwise.
That is categorically false and woefully tone deaf. There is plenty of racism. She just experienced a fraction of it. Something that we as a community have been going through our entire lives in Canada. I'm really, really happy that I was able to share this with you. I look forward to your comments and your feedback. And finally, to the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake, do better. Do better. Restore the plots of the Black people that were definitely pillars of the community, value adds to the community, and deserve their rightful place. Okay? Thank you very much.